Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm Anas. Here we are presenting about the study that we made on the effect of COVID-19 on Indian startup funding ecosystem. Okay, let's see the slides for more information. Okay, the COVID-19 effect on Indian startup funding ecosystem. Let's move to the introduction, which explain about the business understanding. Okay, the beginning stage of startup is no different from a toddler. So like every startups, they have to struggle in their beginning period. So starting from a plan thoroughly, backed up by facts, to assessing its opportunities in the investment market, every minute aspect has to be considered in detailed manner. We all know that the COVID-19 has already frozen the world, and it's made a significant negative impact on the financial market, and it already having made a negative impact on startups as well, because it's very hard to get funders for them. So in India, the country where the startup ecosystem has been exponentially increasing. So here our studies are analysis between startup funding ecosystem of India, pre-COVID-19 announcement and post-COVID-19 announcement. So we are moving on to next, which is our research question, which is predict whether a funding is good or bad at this time, and investigate the effect of COVID-19 on Indian startup funding ecosystem based on industry. So which industry is better for the startups to get more funding. And next one is investigate the effect of COVID-19 on Indian startup funding ecosystem based on city. Nowadays, which city is better for startups? Moving on to next. Okay, it's about the data understanding. Here, the data that we acquired from Kaggle and Track.in. Kaggle provide us with an expansive set of data dating from early 2015 up until January 2020. Latest startup funding data was collected from Track.in. Luckily, all the required data is available in the datasets. Into the data description. Actually, we have found the data to be very specific regarding to our research questions, and the relevant uh, relevant field from the dataset included the date, startup name, and industry vertical, and the city location and amount in USD. Okay. Actually, our data was two sets. One data set was giving the data from 2017 till 2019 time period, and the next data from January till June 2020. Both data have same structured data. And next, the date and amount attributes were in numerical form, and the other attribute was in nominal form, and both attributes was independent. And we had some missing values, and actually we were using the CSV file. So by the help of Excel, we filtered the missing values and we named it as undisclosed or NA. And at the end, we remove this data. As a reason, it's not helping us in the data mining process. Then the quality assessment. Actually, in the source site itself, it already explained that the funding when the funding news came up, that is the date which is mentioned in the source date. It's not the actual date of funding. In addition to that, the startup name necessarily does not denote the name of the company, but they have mentioned the product or service or website which is popularly known. And some of the fundings amount is not disclosed. So these are the some of the missing values which was in the data. So we had to remove such values. As a reason, it wasn't helping us. Next, into data preparation. So the data has been verified and cleaned. Then the process that we undertook is as stated as below. In the beginning, what we did is the data was ordered according to the date, which is from 2017 till 2019, then January till June 2020. Then we identified the missing values and we removed it, as I mentioned before. Then the third step, it was the attribute industry vertical has been categorized accordingly. For example, some of the instance was explaining as transport, we changed it into service. Then the next step was remove the cities which had less than 10 instances because it wasn't helping us. So we had to remove the cities that had less than 10 instances. Then we made new attributes which are average funding and class. The average funding referred to the average amount received by an industry vertical at a location, and the class represents whether the funded amount is greater than or less than the average amount. And we did all this process in Excel by using CSV. Then we converted this into ARFF file by using Weka. Now the data modeling will be presented by Adil. Okay, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm Ahmed Adil Salah, and I'll be walking you through evaluation and deployment. Right. All right, let's start with data modeling. So, the machine learning technique used to answer our first question is logistic regression. This is because we found logistic regression to work best with the categorical class that we have. The attributes used to find our solution are industry vertical, city location, amount in USD, average funding, and class. Let me refute why not others. So to begin with, let's go with linear regression. Linear regression works better with numeric class. And as for naive Bayes and decision tree, both were checked for its accuracy but failed to show any better improvements on accuracy than the logistic regression. And as for clustering and association, both are not suited for predictive analysis. Rather, clustering is much more used in exploration, and association is not good for predicting. All right, let's now move on to the second and third question, which are quite similar. So the machine learning technique used on these questions are J48 decision tree. Let me first mention the attributes used for the second question, which is to find a credible industry in which the funding has been quite good, and which the attributes used are industry and class. And for the third question, which is to find a good city location to seek funding, the attributes to use the city location and class. So let me refute why we did not use the other classification models of clustering or association. As for classification models, none of them gave a better accuracy than decision tree. And as for clustering and association, both of them showed irregular uh, outcomes. As for clustering, it gave us inaccurate values, and as for association, it gave us many rules. One more plus point of using decision tree is because of its easy visualization, which is quite accurate. All right, let's go to model evaluation. So the first figure we see here is the summary of the training data set that we tested with logistic regression. The test option that we chose is split testing with 95%. So the accuracy here is almost 95%, which is a good sign. And then the ROC points at 0.993. And as for the confusion metrics, we see that only two of the instances have been falsely placed. So let's move on to the prediction of the 5% that we gave as for testing. We find here that two of the instances, as mentioned at the confusion metrics, are wrongly predicted. This is the ROC, which is in good shape. This is the ROC for class bad, actually, and this is the ROC for class good, also in good shape. So now let's move on to the summary of the predicted test data. So we see here the accuracy is 52%, which is not a good one, but then it's more than 50. We see here that out of 44 instances, 21 instances have been wrongly placed in the confusion matrix, and this is the result. This is a part of the results. Almost around 8 are missing. We see that these ones with the plus sign have been wrongly placed or wrongly predicted, but the ROC is acceptable. Now, as mentioned before, why did we go with logistic regression? We see here that naive Bayes, it gives a better accuracy, but then it doesn't you see here it only considers the bad class. It doesn't consider the good class. So it's very unfairly balanced. So unbalanced. Thus the accuracy doesn't mean a lot. All right, let's move on to the decision tree for industry, which is our second question. So that, yeah, the machine learning technique we used is decision tree as mentioned before. So the accuracy for this testing is 72%, which is good, and the ROC is 0.636, which is acceptable. And the most important thing about this is its representation. As we see here, we find that only the retail sector shows good, which is that only the funding in retail sector has been up to the par or above the par. The rest have been quite bad, any below average of the industry. Next, the third question we find, which is to find the best city location, we find the accuracy to be 79. Again, the machine learning technique used is decision tree. So we find the accuracy to be 79.54 and ROC to be 0.747, which are really acceptable. And again, the most important part here is the decision tree, the visualization. And we find here that 4 cities have done good, admirably good than the other cities. So this can be recommended. These cities can be recommended if a startup wants to go forward with seeking funding. Let's move on to the deployment section, which is the last section. In here, we find uses for research to help startups and analysts in their ventures. So as for our findings, we conclude that startups can find opportunities to seek funding from within the industry of retail and in cities like Pune, Chennai, Ahmedabad, and Noida. And our research can also help analysts to track the effects of COVID-19 on startup funding ecosystem by predicting whether the funded amount of a particular startup is good or bad with respect to their industry and location. Right. Thank you. That's from our part.